Hi everyone, if you're here watching this video, you obviously want to learn how to animate a South Park style character using Adobe Animate. Now to do this, we're going to use a really famous scene from the original Planet of the Apes. At the end of the movie, the character comes to a realization of what's happened to his world as he knew it. We won't get too much into that, but it creates a really iconic scene that sounds and looks something like this, but we're going to add a South Park twist. So here we go.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
And that's the scene. So in this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to create our characters, how to create the mouth positions, the eyes, get that camera push to come in here, and all that sort of stuff. So let's get into it. Before we get started though, there are a few files that you need to be aware of. So provided for you are a bunch of files that you can download, and they're separated into folders. So if you use the description for this video, or for my students, if you go to Google Classroom, it's provided for you there. There are going to be files that you can download. Now remember, it's going to make a zip file, which is going to be compressed. So you're going to have to uncompress those files to get these to work. Be sure to do a Google search if you're not too sure how to do that. But there are 4 folders here that you want to be aware of. So there's the first folder, which is pre-made graphics. In this folder, what I've done is I've provided different eye shapes and mouth shapes that are pre-made for you, so you can just get right to animating right away. If you don't want to create your own eyes and mouths and your own look, you can use ones that are already created for you. The animate files, these are going to be for each stage of the lesson. So if anything should happen as you work through, you forget to save your computer, the file gets corrupted or whatever, you don't want to lose your work. So we'll give you files that you can open up and just jump to a certain stage, or if you just want a quick refresher and you don't want to have to start right from the beginning, you can use these files. The next folder are assets. These are things that we're going to be using throughout or by the end of the movie. For instance, the background that's included with the South Park character, or South Park style character, I should say, that was created using Adobe Illustrator, and also that audio file that you heard. And then the final one is that final video that you just watched a few minutes ago. So let's jump right into it. And let's take a look at the South Park character. So if you want to jump into assets and open up South Park character setup, you will notice that there's the character created with Adobe Illustrator. Now you can absolutely create this right in Adobe Animate if you'd like. Personally, I just like drawing or creating with Adobe Illustrator instead, so that's why it's here. Now if you're creating your character, regardless if you're using Animate or Illustrator, make sure that anything you want to animate, anything that should be moving on its own, gets its own layer. So for instance, if you want to move the hands separate from the body, make sure that the hands are on separate layers from the body. Same thing with the feet, the eyes, the mouth. Going back to the eyes and the mouth, those definitely have to have their own layers, and we'll talk about why as we go through. So you'll notice that there's a potential that I might have my character's glasses get knocked off. So you can absolutely put those on a separate layer. Same thing, eyes and mouth, as I just mentioned, please make sure those are on separate layers. The entire head, notice that I put the stubble, the hair, and the head all on a separate layer because I'm not going to be animate anything separately. My hair is not going to separate from, or my character's hair is not going to separate from its head, so we'll keep it combined all in one layer. Again, the right hand, the left hand, the torso, left foot, you get the idea. Now, one of the things that I've done when I've created this character, if I turn one of the hands off, you'll notice that I left a little bit extra there. And that's because if the character rotates or moves their hand a little bit, I don't want there to be a blank space there. So for instance, if we look underneath the head, you'll see that I created a little bit more of a shoulder. So when the head rotates, there won't be a gap sitting there. So we're not going to go through how to create the South Park character. Hopefully by now you would know how to use the tools or the drawing tools, and if you don't, you're not too sure how to use Illustrator or Adobe Animate, how to draw on there, go back and take a look at that and then come back to the lesson here. So we've got our characters set up. Again, really important that we have those separate layers because they're going to be on separate layers inside Animate. So with that, let's start working on importing our character. So we'll open up Adobe Animate. and we'll create a new file. And for this file, I'm just going to use the default, I'm going to use HD, just 1280 by 720. You can, by all means, use the full HD if you'd like, or even go to 4K if you really want to knock it out of the park. But we're going to keep it simple here. And I'm going to have my frame rate at 24 frames per second. That is a cinematic frame rate. You may have to change that throughout your movie, but we won't get into that right now. Let's just talk about getting this character set up and doing what it needs to do. So we have our canvas set up. Let's now import our character. So to do that, I'm going to go to File, Import, and Import to Stage. This is going to bring our character directly to the stage, right into the movie, and I don't have to worry about bringing it from my library or anything like that. So if I go Import to Stage, I'm going to go into that Assets folder, and I'm going to find that spCharacterSetup.ai. You're more than welcome to bring in your own character for this lesson if you'd like, but for this we're going to bring in spCharacter.ai for this. If you want to follow along, that's the file that you're going to want to get, and we're going to click Open. Now, Animate is going to notice that it's an Illustrator file. It's going to say, hey, there's a lot of layers to this file. What do you want to do with them? So I'm going to make sure that each layer in my Illustrator file becomes an Animate layer. So I've got them all checked. You can collapse them and check. So if this was your own character, you might want to see, did you have a reference layer that you really don't need to import, whatever the case may be. So I'm collapsing these so you can see that all these layers match the layers from my Illustrator file. You don't need to collapse them though. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I'm going to convert each layer to an Animate layer. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to place the objects all at their original position because I don't want them all to be centered on the stage and have to move them afterwards. So wherever they are in Illustrator, put them in the same spot in Animate, and I'll simply click Import. And that's how easy that is. You'll notice now that our character is inside inside Animate, and every object that had its own layer within Illustrator now has its own layer inside Animate. And that's going to bring us now into getting our character to be able to be assembled and moved. And that's going to bring us into parenting. So if you're jumping to this part, we're now in the second part or the next part of the chapter or the lesson where we're going to talk about parenting, and you can open up the file chapter 3 parenting.fla if you didn't already go through the importing stages from before. So if you have that file open, what we're going to do now, what might be a good idea is I'm going to save it because I haven't saved this yet. So I'm just going to save this as, I'm just going to call this lesson real quick, just so that I have something to fall back on. And again, if you want this starting point right where I'm at right now, chapter 3, parenting.fla. The next thing I have to do is parent each of my pieces. So when I move my torso, my head is going to move along. So the torso is the parent of my head. If my torso moves, my head has to move. However, if my head moves, my torso does not have to move. Same thing, if I move my arm, my hand has to move with it. However, if I move my hand, my arm doesn't have to move. So the parent will always move what's called the child. So in this case, the torso would be the parent of the head. The head would be the child of the torso. In order to parent objects, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that they're all, in this case, a graphic symbol. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that every object on my screen that I want to animate or potentially move or change, it has to be a graphic symbol. Really paying attention to the eyes and the mouth. That'll be super, super important. So to do this, I'm just going to go to the mouth layer, and if I click on the layer right there on the frame, the mouth automatically gets selected. By either going Modify, Convert to Symbol, or pressing F8, you'll be met with this dialog box. What do you want to call this symbol? And give it a meaningful name. I'm going to call it mouth. Done. Then I'll move on to the head, because I wanted the head, and I just realized the glasses was on the top layer, so I can't, and the eyes. I got to make sure I get those as well. So for the head, I'll press F8. And I'm going to call this head. So now that's a graphic. Keep going through all the symbols in your graphic to make sure, or sorry, in your character to make sure that the graphics. So at this point, I'm going to fast forward it through. I'm going to continue making symbols, but I'm going to fast forward just so we don't have to waste too much time. Okay, at this stage, everything on my character is a symbol. You'll notice that if I select the hand, it's a graphic symbol. The left hand, the head, everything. We're now ready to parent. Again, going back to that torso is the parent of the head, so on and so forth. So you'll notice right now, if I move the torso, nothing moves with it. It's all by itself. But I want it to move, when I move the torso, move the head automatically. So what I'll do is I'll go into parenting view, and you do that by clicking on this little kind of flowchart looking symbol right here. And if I click that, you'll just notice that these kind of colored bars here expand to give you the option to parent. Now you always drag from the child to the parent. So if I want the head to move when the torso moves, I'm going to drag from the head layer to the torso. So it looks like this. Here's the head layer, and I'm just going to click in this gap that I got again by pressing that little flowchart looking button, which is the parenting view. And I'm going to click on the head, and I'm going to drag down to torso. You'll notice that you get this little hierarchy looking thing, this little flowchart. So the torso will now control the head. So watch what happens when I grab the torso. Now, the head's not selected, but if I move the torso, the head will automatically move with it. This is going to make moving our character later on so much easier. And we're going to continue just parenting through. So I'm going to work from the bottom up. The feet, both feet, left and right, should be parented by the legs. So if the legs move, so should the feet. Now the legs should also be parented by the torso. If the torso moves, so do the legs. That's kind of the way South Park characters are kind of clumped together. You're not getting a lot of fluid motion, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So the torso parents the legs, legs parent the feet. We've got the left hand should also be parented by the torso. The right hand, same thing. The head is already parented. Now the mouth should be parented by the head. The mouth shouldn't move when the torso moves. The mouth should move when the head moves. So the mouth is parented by the head. The eyes are parented by the head, and the glasses are parented by the head as well. So all the facial features parented by the head to the torso. Sounds like the song, the knee bones connected to. Anyways, so the face, all the face pieces to the head to the torso, hands to the torso, feet to the legs, legs to the torso. So now watch what happens. If I grab the torso and I move it, it's going to parent everything on the screen. So it's going to move the head. You get the idea, hopefully, from here. So that's what parenting does. And it's going to allow us to create some cool animations and have pieces moving individually rather than having to try and move them all individually on their own layers. Now, one last thing now that it's parented that I want to add to this is the rotation point. While this does work, it gets a little bit clunky. So if I try and rotate just the head, you're going to notice that it rotates based on, like in this case, somewhere around the eyes, which is a little weird. If I tilt my head from side to side, it doesn't rotate based on my nose. It rotates based on where my neck is. So what I want to do now that all the pieces are parented, I'm going to go back through and I'm going to change the rotation or the transformation point of each of the pieces. So for instance, if I grab the head, I don't want it to rotate based on that point. So with my free transform tool selected, click on the head, and I'm going to grab that transformation point, and I'm going to move it down right onto the chin. So now when I rotate the head, it makes more sense. And notice that's why I left the shoulders there. There's not a big blank space sitting there. So again, changing all the rotation points. So the only ones you really need to change, the head. I don't have to worry about the eyes or the glasses because they're not going to rotate. Same thing with the mouth. It's not going to rotate on its own, but the head might. The hands might. So I'm going to move the rotation point to the top of the hands so that when the character moves, right, it makes a little bit more sense rather than rotating, in this case, right in the middle of the hand. So I'll move both those rotation points. The torso, you might have it bend based on the waist right there. So if the character leans in, well, in this case, it's parenting everything. So maybe with that one, you don't have to worry about it too much. But if you add it separate from the legs, you might want to change that rotation point. And then the feet. Right now, if the character was going to tap its feet, it looks a little bit weird, right? So we're going to move those rotation points right to the middle, just like that. Okay. So now we have a completely set up character. It's all parented. It has the proper rotation points. You can go through and maybe just start playing with, okay, how does that look? That looks good. I'm going to undo it and just rotate all the different points. Check at this point to see, is it parenting like it should be? And if it's ready to go, just save your file at this point. And now we're ready to move on to the next part. In this part, what we're going to do is we're going to add expressions to our character. We need to make it look surprised. We need to maybe make it look angry, but we definitely need the mouth positions. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our character swap its look every time it says something. So we're going to take the mouth, and when it's saying something like, maybe we'll have the mouth closed. But then if it's going, we'll have it open its mouth and obviously say the sound. So we're going to focus on 7 different mouth positions in this video. Now, there's different ways of doing this, but for this one, we're going to focus on 7 different mouth positions. We're going to use e, o, and f. Now, I'm exaggerating those, obviously, but we're going to use those 7 mouth positions. E, o, f. To do that, we are going to go inside the graphic symbol for the mouth. Now, remember, a graphic has its own timeline. And in this case, we're going to say, I want this mouth graphic to look different based on the sounds that you hear. So to do this, I'm going to double click on the mouth. And you'll see right here, there's only one current look, right? So it only has the mouth shape. We're going to get all the different mouths and put them in here. Now, you are more than welcome to go through and draw what would look like. You'll notice here in this situation, the character looks a little bit happy. But when he's going, you maniacs, you blew it up. Maybe you'd want it to be more straight or have the mouth curled down. You might even want different mouths for things like because there's a difference between and So think about things like that when you're drawing your mouths for this situation. How is the character saying it? For this, though, we're just going to use a default 7 mouths and keep it simple. We're going to open a file, and you're going to, inside the not animate files, inside pre-made graphics, I've supplied some mouths for you. So we're going to open up that file, and there are the 7 different mouths that we are going to use. Now, the full mouth graphic, everything we're about to create, there's a final version right there. So if you're creating multiple characters, once you understand what we're about to do, you're more than welcome to just grab the full mouth graphic. All the mouth positions are already included. But for this one, I'm going to start grabbing different mouths and put them over. So I'm going to grab this one right here, this mouth shape. I'll go back to my lesson, and I'm going to go to frame 2. I'm going to insert a blank keyframe, and I'm going to paste that mouth shape. And I'm going to try and line it up as best I can with the mouth. Now, where the mouth was, I should say. You might want to turn onion skinning on for this. And you might have to do a little bit of resizing and repositioning. So if I was to look at it right now, I think that looks about right. I'll turn off onion skinning. If I go, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to just keep going through, putting in blank keyframes, using onion skinning to place my mouth position. So I'll go back to the guide here. I'll grab that E mouth shape and I'll copy it. I'll come back over here on frame 3, put a blank keyframe because I want to put a whole new mouth, and I'll paste it. Notice it's way over here. That doesn't help. I'll turn on onion skinning. Where was the mouth in the last frame? And I will position this, and I might even want to scale it down just a little bit. So it's not It's not all mouth. Keep going through. So at this point, I'm going to fast forward through this as well so we don't take up too much time. I'm going to put a blank keyframe in, copy and paste over the next mouth, align it as best I can, and continue on. Okay, at this stage, I'm ready to have a look at this. So we're going to go through. If I just kind of scrub through, there's E, O, F. Okay. And the very next thing I'm going to do, and this is going to be important for later, I'm going to label each one of these frames. So to label a frame, if you click on the frame and you look at the properties of the frame over here on the right hand side, you'll notice there's a frame label. And what I'm going to do is I'll type in, let's say, closed for the first mouth. And then on frame 2, I'll type, this is ah. And then for frame 3, E. Now it doesn't make any difference. So this is, I'm going to put cons for consonants. So d, n, okay? Any sound like that where the mouth, kind of the teeth are showing. It's not going to change how your animation works, but it's going to make life for you a little bit easier later. So this is O. And then we've got ul. And then we've got F or V. So now inside the mouth shape, we've got E, O, F. Now that you know how the setup works, if you go back into this mouth shape, remember I said there's a full graphic there. If you were to make more characters later, instead of copying and pasting and trying to get everything lined up perfectly, if you look, I've already done that inside this graphic symbol right there. So if you find it easier later on, multiple characters, I don't want to have to keep doing this, grab that mouth shape, copy and paste it over. So now we're done with the mouth. Now the next thing we have to worry about is, and I'm just going to turn off parenting view right here, is that when the object stays on the screen, watch what's going to happen. I'm going to jump down the line. I'm just like frame 45. It really doesn't matter. Choose as many or as little frames as you want down the line. And I'm going to insert a frame. And watch what's going to happen to the mouth. Do you see how it's already flying through all the different mouth shapes there? E, O, F, E, O, F, E, O, F. Okay, you can see what's happening there. That's because it's set to loop automatically. Those mouths, that mouth graphic will play all the mouth shapes and then go back and repeat over and over and over again. We don't want that to happen. I want to tell Animate, no, I'll tell you which mouth I want to see and when. Now to do that, select the mouth shape and then simply inside looping, so making sure you're looking at the properties of the object, inside looping, set it to single frame. So if you press that, what this gives you now is the ability to choose the mouth. So watch what's going to happen here. Two things. One, I can scrub through, the mouth doesn't change. I can also click on the mouth. I can click on the frame picker. And there are all my mouth shapes. Now, I would suggest you take the frame picker palette off of there, because I find when you deselect it, sometimes the palette goes away and I don't want that. So I'm going to bring the palette right here and I'm just going to resize it. Now when I click the mouth, and I'm just going to zoom out so I can see all the mouths here. Now at any point, I can choose a different mouth and it will automatically swap for me. So if I wanted my character to say ma, right? Start off with M and maybe down by here he says ah. So I'll select that frame right there. You don't even have to select the mouth because it's the only thing that's on there. And then I want, at this point, ah. Notice this is why I put labels. Now I can see what that mouth shape is. Now if you can tell from the look of it, great. But if you can't, then you can use those labels. So now watch what my character is going to do. Ah, ma, ma. Okay? And that's how we're going to create our animation. I'm just going to clear this keyframe. Now, to save time, I'm not going to do all the shapes, but you're welcome to try out different things. You could use the exact same process for the eyes, and you can use maybe even eyebrows as well. You'll notice in my animation I have eyebrows that show up, and that's just a graphic that has frame 1 nothing, and frame 2 has eyebrows sticking up like this. And it allows you to create different looks. Same thing for the eyes. You can go inside the graphic symbol and make the eyes look up, down, left, right, and then closed. Have a look at some of the sample files that I provided for you, or even inside. Actually, if I open up inside pre-made graphics, open up eyes, and you get a bunch of different looks here. So I provided you different eyes that you can use, and once again, there's a full graphic that's already been set up for you if you'd like to use that. And I'll just double click this real quick by unlocking the eyes layer. And if I double click it, you can see there are all the different eyes that you can switch between. And that's going to allow you to create different looks for your character. So with our characters set up, we've got our looks done. We've got our parenting done. It's now, we're finally ready to add audio. So I'm just going to save this really quickly. And if you're at this part of the lesson, you want to learn how to add audio. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open the Chapter 5 audio file, which will bring you to this setup. Now that file also has the eyes and the eyebrows set up. So if you just finished the setup where we did the mouth and you want to see how I did the eyes, go ahead and open that file as well. If you did it yourself, awesome, good for you. And if you just joined us, like I said, open that Chapter 5 audio file. So what I'm going to do, it's a really good idea to make a new layer. I'm going to call it audio, and I like to move it all the way to the top. I don't want my audio layer to be between the left hand and the right hand or somewhere on the layers palette. I want to make sure it's all the way at the top, or if you prefer all the way at the bottom. It really doesn't matter, just so it's easy to find later on. And I'm going to make sure that frame 1 is selected. And I'm going to go File, Import to Stage, and I'm going to bring in from the Assets folder, umaniacs.wave. And I'll click Open. And you'll notice there's the wave file showing up. Like there's all the sound waves in the file. If you don't see that, you might only be looking at one frame of it. So right now, I'm going to be telling the movie to play 45 frames of this audio. We're going to talk about setting up the audio here in a second. Now, I just know the audio is roughly 450 frames long. Remember, that's at like 24 frames per second. So let's make sure I've got that number correct. I'm going to jump down to 450. I want to make sure I can see the whole audio file. So if I jump down to 450 right here, okay, and I'm going to insert frames on all of those, and you'll notice that, yeah, that's pretty much where the audio ends right there. Now, if for any reason, if perhaps you used a different frame rate, you can either change your frame rate to match, which is 24 frames per second, or you can, it should still work out actually regardless now that I think about it. So the very last thing we're going to do is we need to start doing the different looks for the different shapes. I need to listen. So when the character goes, you know, you maniacs, when he goes, ooh, I want that ooh, that O mouth shape, so on and so forth. But I need to be able to hear the audio. And let's see, I don't know if I have it set up by default. You can hear, right, as I scrub through, I can hear the audio. If you can't, it's because of an event setup or a sync setup that you have. If I click on any frame of the audio, it does not matter. Any frame on the audio layer, you're going to notice that you have a sync setting. If you set it to stream, which is what I have right here, it will play that exact sound at that exact frame. If you have it set to event, that's not going to happen. The audio is just going to play, just kind of go, and it doesn't matter about timing. So I'm going to make sure that that is set to sync. So again, pressing on any frame on that layer, sending it to stream, sorry. And now I can hear it. Now I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can set this up. I'm going to save this file real quick because I'm going to do something. I'm going to want to undo everything it does, which means reverting back to this saved file. So there's one method that's super easy but I find it's rarely worked for me, but maybe it'll work for you. I'm going to go on the mouth layer right here, and I want that mouth to sync to the audio, meaning, hey, Animate, listen, if you hear I want you to show the mouth shape. If you hear I want you to show the mouth shape. It's going to analyze the audio, but you're going to see how it gets a little weird in places. So I'm going to select the mouth, and you'll notice that there's a lip syncing section right there. This is where you're going to sync the mouth to the actual audio. So if I go lip syncing, it's going to ask you, okay, what are these mouth shapes? You'll notice that Animate expects more mouths. So expect something for D and O versus woo, right? It's expecting different mouth shapes. We're just going to stick to the 7 we have. So neutral is just, what if your character is just standing there doing nothing? Okay, so we're going to leave it with that same mouth shape. Well, we have that. So if I click on there's D, we didn't make one specifically for D, but we made one for consonants. So anything that's not a vowel, we're going to put that in there. E, I don't know why I had to say it like that, but I did. F, we made one for that as well. And see those labels coming in handy again. So F or V, L, there you go. M, it's the same mouth shape. O, we have that. R, that's a consonant. S is a consonant. That's a tough one. We didn't really make an but it might look something like this, like E. It's pretty much kind of the same mouth shape in this case. And then woo, I'm going to use the same shape right there. Now the next thing it's asking me is goes, okay, now I know all your mouth shapes. What audio do you want me to analyze and sync them to? So it's on our audio layer. If you had multiple characters with multiple audio stuff going on, put them all on different layers and this will make life so much easier for you. So I'm just going to say, yeah, sync it with the audio layer. Click done. It's going to analyze and it's going to put all the keyframes in there for me. Okay. And it's going to do all those different mouth looks using that frame picker that we did earlier. But it's not going to work that well. I'm predicting right now. So let's see what happens.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Damn you! God damn you all to hell!
You see right there, it doesn't know what to do because of the background noise going on. Like when it hears the wind and all that sort of stuff, it thinks it's dialogue and it analyzes. So it didn't work that well. There's also a couple different places where I'm not a big fan. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to revert. I'm just going to go back to my last saved version. Okay. And now we're back. So there's a saying that's kind of sometimes it's easier to build it from scratch than it is to try and fix something. So in the case of houses, if you're trying to fix up an old house, sometimes they feel it's just easier to knock it down and build new because it's just so much harder to try and patch together things that might have gone wrong. I find that's kind of the case when it comes to this as well. So if I go through here, right, the first thing he says is you. Now, to get you got to listen to how the character says it. Does he just go, you, and he says it really fast, so you want to get right to that, like, kind of O mouth shape? Or does he go, you, like, E, oo? In this case, I feel he says, like, kind of that E just a little bit at the start. Now, it's really important to make sure that you're just before the sound is made rather than late. Meaning, if you feel that the E mouth, or like you, so he starts saying you at frame 24. It's better to start, if you can get right on frame 24, awesome. It's better to start on frame 23 though, than be late and go to frame 25. So if I come down to the mouth shape, I'm going to go to frame 24, am I 23? Frame 23. And here's where I want him to start going, you. So I'm going to say on frame 23, the mouth is selected. My frame picker view is right there. And if you don't see it, make sure you click the mouth and look at the properties of the object. Okay, you can even just select the frame and click the properties of the object and grab that frame picker. And I'm going to go E, and I'm going to keep listening. And right here, I feel like he starts saying like, ooh, you. Right? And he holds that. And you're going to go through and just listen to the rest of it. So let's do Maniacs, and then we're going to fast forward through so you don't have to watch this whole thing and then put it all together. So here goes you. And then he starts going, you maniac. That's the closed mouth. Right here. Maniacs. So somewhere around here, A. This is a tough part because we didn't make an A mouth shape, but we did make an Ah. Ah is a little bit different than A. So if you wanted to get really, really specific, you might have to make different mouth shapes for that. A is a little bit smaller than Ah. Ah, A, right? So in this case, we're going to go, you have to, is he saying it more like A, which is more of an E? He's not. He's going, you may. That's like a big mouth. You may. And then he goes, you maniacs. Again, that N mouth shape we didn't make. We really should have a shape that's kind of, like that curled tongue. We didn't do it. We're just going to keep it simple. Let's stick with consonants. If it's not a vowel, and it's not one of those other shapes like O, F, those ones, we're just going to stick with that that fourth look there, consonants. So you may, so right about there, you may, ni. Right there, may knee, mouth shape, E, may knee, ax. Back to that consonant. So, ah. May knee, ah. And right about there is that x. You maniacs. Let's see how we did here. Not bad. Okay, so that worked out well. Check your timing. I didn't give you exact frame numbers. You might be one frame different than me, but if it looks good, it looks good. So he goes, you maniacs. He's not going to go, you maniacs, and hold the O shape. That looks weird. You maniacs. He's going to close his mouth. You maniacs. You blew it up. Close the mouth. You maniacs. This is where it looks weird, right? He's smiling. We probably should have done a different mouth, but it is what it is. Now you're going to go through and you blew it up. You get the rest of it. Well, I'm going to fast forward you through this. I'm going to fast forward through this, I should say, and then we'll check in once I'm done. Okay, so that was a little bit more work, but the reality is I felt that was easier than going back and figuring out, like clearing keyframes that the lip sync would have put in earlier, that Animate would have done automatically, and I'm able to have full control over this. So let's see, I'm just going to save this real quick. Let's see how I did.
You maniacs! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
And there you go. Not bad at all. A really good test I find that you can do is as if you actually watch the video with no audio, and can you kind of like visualize, or do you still hear the person saying it? Almost essentially like kind of reading lips in a way. Do you still feel that the character's saying that? If it feels off, you can go back and clean it up a little bit. So that is how we can add and sync audio in Adobe Animate. Now, the last thing we want to do is that little final part. So if you are, if you're just jumping to this part of the video and you want to know, hey, I've got my character to say something, how do I get my character to move? Or if you lost your file or whatever and you want to jump to the point I'm at right now, if you open up chapter 6 movement.fla, you'll be right at this point. It might look a little bit different than what I've got here because that was pre-made, but the concept will just be the same. So now I've got my character saying what he needs to say. Just as a quick recap, he's now going to be moving his mouth to all the dialogue that's being said. But I need him to move. So we're going to do a couple different things here. One, let's bring in a cool background. I'm going to make a new layer down here. Boom. Call it background. And in the assets folder, I'm going to go File, Import to Stage, and I'm going to bring in that POTA background. So Planet of the Apes background, PNG. I'll bring that in, and I may have to resize it just a little bit here. Let's see, what do we got? Yeah, that might be a little bit big. So we'll just resize that real quick. So it fits the screen. It may not be perfect, but that's okay. So if we did that, and actually I probably should just moved it. There you go. It's going to be too tall, but we don't need the whole thing in there. We'll just line it up as best we can. And I'm going to lock that background layer so it's done. I'm going to lock every layer but the torso layer. Remember, the torso is pretty much the parent of everything by association. So let's take our character, click it on the torso, and let's get them off the screen. So I'm going to move them over here, right here. And I'm going to look to see where does the character start talking. And the character starts talking right, I think I might have gone too far. Yeah, the character starts talking around frame 23. So I'm going to say by frame 20, they should be in position. Now you can have the character continuing to walk while they talk too, but I'm going to put a keyframe in right here, and I'm going to move the character onto the screen right there, maybe off, where am I going to put him? I'll put him in front of the horse right there. Okay, not realistic to the background we have, but that's not really the point right now. I'll put in a classic tween. Notice now it's only moving the torso, but because the torso is parenting everything else, everything's moving. Yeah, you can put in little if you want to do the wobble and all that. I'm going to skip that for this part just to kind of speed things up because this has been going on for a little while now. I'm just going to save that real quick. So now my character will walk onto the screen before they start talking. And if I really want to add that dramatic effect, you can throw in a camera layer. Camera, I like keeping all the way at the top. That's my personal preference. And I'm going to say I want it to, from when he starts talking right here. Okay, and this is my personal preference. You do whatever you want with the camera. But I'm going to say right there. I'll put a keyframe in right there. And I'm going to have it continuously kind of do a slow zoom the whole time he's talking. Insert keyframe. And at this point, I'm going to have it like right in on his face like that. We'll move the camera over a little bit. Probably would have been better if I kept the Statue of Liberty in the shot, but it is what it is. And then now I can throw in a classic tween for that camera. If you want to know more about the camera, if you've never worked with it before, go ahead and just do a quick tutorial on that. But now we've got ourselves a really cool, slow zoom in on our character.
Damn you! God damn you all to hell!
And that's what it ends. Now, what I haven't done in this one is I haven't done the eyes expression and all of that sort of stuff and the eyebrows. If you'd like to see the setup for that, the file that I provided for you, chapter 7 final.fla, has the full setup where I have a graphic of the eyes, so you'll see them close when he yells, eyebrows will come up when he starts kind of getting, you know, like those really, you maniacs, when he goes into maniacs, the eyebrows come up. So have a look at chapter 7 final.fla, and that will show you the whole setup for that final movie. So that was the whole process of getting a South Park character to move and talk within Adobe Animate. We talked about importing the character. We talked about parenting all the pieces, so making sure they're graphics and then parenting them. We talked about creating different looks for the mouths and the eyes, any different expression you want. We talked about bringing the audio in. We investigated the different ways that you can actually sync the mouth to how you're going to the audio you're going to play, whether it's manual or it's whether you do it frame by frame yourself, or you have Adobe Animate do that for you automatically. And then finally, we talked about getting the character to move and little camera pushes so that, or camera movements, I should say, so that you can get a little bit more of a better animation feel to your story. So hopefully that was informative. You found that beneficial, and best of luck animating.